terror, to the walls and the roofs of the houses, and Baloo drew a deep breath of relief. His fur was much thicker than Bagheera's, but he had suffered sorely in the fight. Then Kaa opened his mouth for the first time and spoke one long hissing word, and the faraway monkeys, hurrying to the defense of the cold lairs, stayed where they were, cowering, till the loaded branches bent and crackled under them. The monkeys on the walls and the empty houses stopped their cries, and in the stillness that fell upon the city Mowgli heard Bagheera shaking his wet sides as he came up from the tank. Then the clamor broke out again. The monkeys leaped higher up the walls. They clung around the necks of the big stone idols and shrieked as they skipped along the battlements, while Mowgli, dancing in the summer house, put his eye to the screen work in hooted owl fashion between his front teeth, to show his derision and contempt. "Get the man-cub out of that trap, I can do no more," Bagheera gasped. "Let us take the man-cub and go. They may attack again. They will not move till I order them." "Stay you so." Kaa hissed, and the city was silent once more. "I could not come before, brother, but I think I heard thee call." This was to Bagheera. I may have cried out in the battle," Bagheera answered. "Baloo, art thou hurt?" "I am not sure that they did not pull me into 100 little bowlings," said Baloo, gravely shaking one leg after the other. "Wow! I am sore. Kaa, we owe thee, I think, our lives, Bagheera and I." "No matter. Where is the manling?" "Here, in a trap." "I cannot climb out," cried Mowgli. The curve of the broken dome was above his head. "Take him away. He dances like Mao the peacock." "He will crush our young," said the cobras inside. "Huh," said Kaa with a chuckle, "he has friends everywhere, this manling." "Stand back, manling. And hide you, O poison people. I break down the wall." Kaa looked carefully till he found a discolored crack in the marble tracery showing a weak spot, made 2 or 3 light taps with his head to get the distance, and then lifting up 6 feet of his body clear of the ground, sent home 6 full-power smashing blows, nose first. The screenwork broke and fell away in a cloud of dust and rubbish, and Mowgli leaped through the opening and flung himself between Baloo and Bagheera, an arm around each big neck. "Art thou hurt?" said Baloo, hugging him softly. "I am sore, hungry, and not a little bruised. But, oh, they have handled ye grievously, my brothers. Ye bleed." "Others also," said Bagheera, licking his lips and looking at the monkey dead on the terrace and round the tank. "It is nothing, if thou art safe, oh, my pride of all little frogs," whimpered Baloo. "Of that we shall judge later," said Bagheera, in a dry voice that Mowgli did not at all like. "But here is Kaa to whom we owe the battle and thou owest thy life. Thank him according to our customs, Mowgli." Mowgli turned and saw the great python's head swaying a foot above his own. "So this is the manling," said Kaa. "Very soft is his skin, and he is not unlike the Bondar log. Have a care, manling, that I do not mistake thee for a monkey some twilight when I have newly changed my coat." "We be one blood, thou and I," Mowgli answered. "I take my life from thee tonight. My kill shall be thy kill if ever thou art hungry, O Kaa." "All thanks, little brother," said Kaa, though his eyes twinkled. "And what may so bold a hunter kill?" "I ask that I may follow when next he goes abroad. I kill nothing, I am too little, but I drive goats toward such as can use them. When thou art empty, come to me and see if I speak the truth. I have some skill in these." He held out his hands, "and if ever thou art in a trap, I may pay the debt which I owe to thee, to Bagheera, and to Baloo, here. Good hunting to ye all, my masters." "Well said," growled Baloo, for Mowgli had returned thanks very prettily. The python dropped his head lightly for a minute on Mowgli's shoulder. "A brave heart and a courteous tongue," said he. They shall carry thee far through the jungle, manling. But now go hence quickly with thy friends. Go and sleep, for the moon sets, and what follows it is not well that thou shouldst see. The moon was sinking behind the hills, and the lines of trembling monkeys huddled together on the walls and battlements looked like ragged shaky fringes of things. Baloo went down to the tank for a drink, and Bagheera began to put his fur in order, as Kaa glided out into the center of the terrace and brought his jaws together with a ringing snap that drew all the monkeys' eyes upon him. "The moon sets," he said. "Is there yet light enough to see?" From the walls came a moan like the wind in the treetops. "We see, O Kaa." "Good. Begins now the dance of the hunger of Kaa. Sit still and watch." He turned twice or thrice in a big circle, weaving his head from right to left. Then he began making loops and figures of 8 with his body, and soft, oozy triangles that melted into squares and 5-sided figures, and coiled mounds, never resting, never hurrying, and never stopping his low humming song. It grew darker and darker, till at last the dragging, shifting coils disappeared, but they could hear the rustle of the scales. Baloo and Bagheera stood still as stone, growling in their throats, their neck hair bristling, and Mowgli watched and wondered. "Bandar log," said the voice of Kaa at last, "can ye stir foot or hand without my order? Speak. Without thy order we cannot stir foot or hand, O Kaa." "Good. Come all one pace nearer to me." The lines of the monkeys swayed forward helplessly, and Baloo and Bagheera took one stiff step forward with them. "Nearer," hissed Kaa, and they all moved again. Mowgli laid his hands on Baloo and Bagheera to get them away, and the two great beasts started as though they had been waked from a dream. "Keep thy hand on my shoulder," Bagheera whispered. "Keep it there, or I must go back to Kaa." "Ah! It is only old Kaa making circles on the dust," said Mowgli. "Let us go." And the three slipped off through a gap in the walls to the jungle. "Hoof," said Baloo, when he stood under the still trees again. "Never more will I make an ally of Kaa," and he shook himself all over. "He knows more than we," said Bagheera, trembling. "In a little time, had I stayed, I should have walked down his throat." "Many will walk by that road before the moon rises again," said Baloo. "He will have good hunting after his own fashion." "But what was the meaning of it all?" said Mowgli, who did not know anything of a python's powers of fascination. "I saw no more than a big snake making foolish circles till the dark came. And his nose was all sore." "Ho! Ho! Mowgli," said Bagheera angrily, "his nose was sore on thy account, as my ears and sides and paws, and Baloo's neck and shoulders are bitten on thy account. Neither Baloo nor Bagheera will be able to hunt with pleasure for many days." "It is nothing," said Baloo, "we have the man-cub again." "True, but he has cost us heavily in time which might have been spent in good hunting, in wounds, in hair I am half plucked along my back, and last of all, in honor. For, remember, Mowgli, I, who am the Black Panther, was forced to call upon Kaa for protection, and Baloo and I were both made stupid as little birds by the hunger dance. All this, man-cub, came of thy playing with the Bandar log." "True, it is true," said Mowgli sorrowfully. "I am an evil man-cub, and my stomach is sad in me. Mf. What says the law of the jungle, Baloo?" Baloo did not wish to bring Mowgli into any more trouble, but he could not tamper with the law, so he mumbled, "Sorrow never stays punishment. But remember, Bagheera, he is very little." "I will remember. But he has done mischief, and blows must be dealt now. Mowgli, hast thou anything to say?" "Nothing. I did wrong. Baloo and thou are wounded. It is just." Bagheera gave him half a dozen love taps. From a panther's point of view, they would hardly have waked one of his own cubs, but for a 7-year-old boy they amounted to as severe a beating as you could wish to avoid. When it was all over, Mowgli sneezed, and picked himself up without a word. "Now," said Bagheera, "jump on my back, little brother, and we will go home." One of the beauties of jungle law is that punishment settles all scores. There is no nagging afterward. Mowgli laid his head down on Bagheera's back and slept so deeply that he never waked when he was put down in the home cave. Road Song of the Bondar log. Here we go in a flung festoon, halfway up to the jealous moon. Don't you envy our pranceful bands? Don't you wish you had extra hands? Wouldn't you like if your tails were so, curved in the shape of a Cupid's bow? Now you're angry, but never mind, brother, thy tail hangs down behind. Here we sit in a branchy row, thinking of beautiful things we know, dreaming of deeds that we mean to do, all complete, in a minute or two, something noble and wise and good, done by merely wishing we could. We've forgotten, but never mind, brother, thy tail hangs down behind. All the talk we ever have heard uttered by bat or beast or bird, hide or fin or scale or feather, jabber it quickly and all together. Excellent. Wonderful. Once again. Now we are talking just like men. Let's pretend we are. Never mind, brother, thy tail hangs down behind. This is the way of the monkey kind. Then join our leaping lines that scum fish through the pines, that rocket by where, light and high, the wild grape swings. By the rubbish in our wake, and the noble noise we make, be sure, we're going to do some splendid things. Tiger. Tiger. What of the hunting, hunter bold? Brother, the watch was long and cold. What of the quarry ye went to kill? Brother, he crops in the jungle still. Where is the power that made your pride? Brother, it ebbs from my flank and side. Where is the haste that ye hurry by? Brother, I go to my lair to die. Now we must go back to the first tale. When Mowgli left the wolf's cave after the fight with the pack at the Council Rock, he went down to the ploughed lands where the villagers lived, but he would not stop there because it was too near to the jungle, and he knew that he had made at least one bad enemy at the council. So he hurried on, keeping to the rough road that ran down the valley, and followed it at a steady jog-trot for nearly 20 miles, till he came to a country that he did not know. The valley opened out into a great plain dotted over with rocks and cut up by ravines. At one end stood a little village, and at the other the thick jungle came down in a sweep to the grazing grounds, and stopped there as though it had been cut off with a hoe. All over the plain, cattle and buffaloes were grazing, and when the little boys in charge of the herd saw Mowgli they shouted and ran away, and the yellow pariah dogs that hang about every Indian village barked. Mowgli walked on, for he was feeling hungry, and when he came to the village gate he saw the big thorn bush that was drawn up before the gate at twilight, pushed to one side. He said, for he had come across more than one such barricade in his night rambles after things to eat. So men are afraid of the people of the jungle here also. He sat down by the gate, and when a man came out he stood up, opened his mouth, and pointed down it to show that he wanted food. The man stared, and ran back up the one street of the village shouting for the priest, who was a big, fat man dressed in white, with a red and yellow mark on his forehead. The priest came to the gate, and with him at least 100 people, who stared and talked and shouted and pointed at Mowgli. They have no manners, these men folk, said Mowgli to himself. Only the gray ape would behave as they do. So he threw back his long hair and frowned at the crowd. What is there to be afraid of, said the priest. Look at the marks on his arms and legs. They are the bites of wolves. He is but a wolf child run away from the jungle. Of course, in playing together, the cubs had often nipped Mowgli harder than they intended, and there were white scars all over his arms and legs. But he would have been the last person in the world to call these bites, for he knew what real biting meant. "Ar! Ar!" said 2 or 3 women together. To be bitten by wolves, poor child. He is a handsome boy. He has eyes like red fire. By my honor, Mesua, he is not unlike thy boy that was taken by the tiger. Let me look, said a woman with heavy copper rings on her wrists and ankles, and she peered at Mowgli under the palm of her hand. Indeed he is not. He is thinner, but he has the very look of my boy. The priest was a clever man, and he knew that Mesua was wife to the richest villager in the place. So he looked up at the sky for a minute and said solemnly, "What the jungle has taken the jungle has restored. Take the boy into thy house, my sister, and forget not to honor the priest who sees so far into the lives of men." By the bull that bought me, said Mowgli to himself, but all this talking is like another looking over by the pack. Well, if I am a man I must become. The crowd parted as the woman beckoned Mowgli to her hut, where there was a red lacquered bedstead, a great earthen grain chest with funny raised patterns on it, half a dozen copper cooking pots, an image of a Hindu god in a little alcove, and on the wall a real-looking glass, such as they sell at the country fairs. She gave him a long drink of milk and some bread, and then she laid her hand on his head and looked into his eyes, for she thought perhaps that he might be her real son come back from the jungle where the tiger had taken him. So she said, "Nathu, oh Nathu." Mowgli did not show that he knew the name. "Dost thou not remember the day when I gave thee thy new shoes?" She touched his foot, and it was almost as hard as horn. "No," she said sorrowfully, "those feet have never worn shoes, but thou art very like my Nathu, and thou shalt be my son." Mowgli was uneasy, because he had never been under a roof before. But as he looked at the thatch, he saw that he could tear it out any time if he wanted to get away, and that the window had no fastenings. "What is the good of a man," he said to himself at last, "if he does not understand man's talk? Now I am as silly and dumb as a man would be with us in the jungle. I must speak their talk." It was not for fun that he had learned while he was with the wolves to imitate the challenge of bucks in the jungle and the grunt of the little wild pig. So, as soon as Mesua pronounced a word Mowgli would imitate it almost perfectly, and before dark he had learned the names of many things in the hut. There was a difficulty at bedtime, because Mowgli would not sleep under anything that looked so like a panther trap as that hut, and when they shut the door he went through the window. "Give him his will," said Mesua's husband. "Remember he can never till now have slept on a bed. If he is indeed sent in the place of our son he will not run away." So Mowgli stretched himself in some long, clean grass at the edge of the field, but before he had closed his eyes a soft grey nose poked him under the chin. "Phew," said Grey Brother, he was the eldest of Mother Wolf's cubs. "This is a poor reward for following thee 20 miles. Thou smellest of wood smoke and cattle altogether like a man already. Wake, little brother, I bring news." "Are all well in the jungle?" said Mowgli, hugging him. "All except the wolves that were burned with the red flower. Now, listen. Shere Khan has gone away to hunt far off till his coat grows again, for he is badly singed. When he returns he swears that he will lay thy bones in the Waingunga. There are 2 words to that. I also have made a little promise. But news is always good. I am tired tonight, very tired with new things, Grey Brother, but bring me the news always. Thou wilt not forget that thou art a wolf." "Men will not make thee forget," said Grey Brother anxiously. "Never. I will always remember that I love thee and all in our cave. But also I will always remember that I have been cast out of the pack. And that thou mayest be cast out of another pack. Men are only men, little brother, and their talk is like the talk of frogs in a pond. When I come down here again, I will wait for thee in the bamboos at the edge of the grazing ground." For 3 months after that night Mowgli hardly ever left the village gate, he was so busy learning the ways and customs of men. First he had to wear a cloth round him, which annoyed him horribly, and then he had to learn about money, which he did not in the least understand, and about plowing, of which he did not see the use. Then the little children in the village made him very angry. Luckily, the law of the jungle had taught him to keep his temper, for in the jungle life and food depend on keeping your temper, but when they made fun of him because he would not play games or fly kites, or because he mispronounced some word, only the knowledge that it was unsportsmanlike to kill little naked cubs kept him from picking them up and breaking them in two. He did not know his own strength in the least. In the jungle he knew he was weak compared with the beasts, but in the village people said that he was as strong as a bull. And Mowgli had not the faintest idea of the difference that caste makes between man and man. When the potter's donkey slipped in the clay pit, Mowgli hauled it out by the tail, and helped to stack the pots for their journey to the market at Ch04. That was very shocking, too, for the potter is a low-caste man, and his donkey is worse. When the priest scolded him, Mowgli threatened to put him on the donkey too, and the priest told Messua's husband that Mowgli had better be set to work as soon as possible, and the village headman told Mowgli that he would have to go out with the buffaloes next day, and herd them while they grazed. No one was more pleased than Mowgli, and that night, because he had been appointed a servant of the village, as it were, he went off to a circle that met every evening on a masonry platform under a great fig tree. It was the village club, and the headman and the watchman and the barber, who knew all the gossip of the village, and old Buldeo, the village hunter, who had a tower musket, met and smoked. The monkeys sat and talked in the upper branches, and there was a hole under the platform where a cobra lived, and he had his little platter of milk every night because he was sacred, and the old men sat around the tree and talked, and pulled at the big hukas, the water pipes, till far into the night. They told wonderful tales of gods and men and ghosts, and Buldeo told even more wonderful ones of the ways of beasts in the jungle, till the eyes of the children sitting outside the circle bulged out of their heads. Most of the tales were about animals, for the jungle was always at their door. The deer and the wild pig grubbed up their crops, and now and again the tiger carried off a man at twilight, within sight of the village gates. Mowgli, who naturally knew something about what they were talking of, had to cover his face not to show that he was laughing, while Buldeo, the tower musket across his knees, climbed on from one wonderful story to another, and Mowgli's shoulders shook. Buldeo was explaining how the tiger that had carried away Messua's son was a ghost tiger, and his body was inhabited by the ghost of a wicked, old money-lender, who had died some years ago. And I know that this is true, he said, because Puran Das always limped from the blow that he got in a riot when his account books were burned, and the tiger that I speak of he limps, too, for the tracks of his pads are unequal. True, true, that must be the truth, said the greybeards, nodding together. Are all these tales such cobwebs and moon talk? Said Mowgli. That tiger limps because he was born lame, as everyone knows. To talk of the soul of a money-lender in a beast that never had the courage of a jackal is child's talk. Buldeo was speechless with surprise for a moment, and the headman stared. Oh ho! It is the jungle brat, is it? Said Buldeo. If thou art so wise, better bring his hide to Ch04, for the government has set 100 rupees on his life. Better still, talk not when thy elders speak. Mowgli rose to go. All the evening I have lain here listening, he called back over his shoulder, and, except once or twice, Buldeo has not said one word of truth concerning the jungle, which is at his very doors. How, then, shall I believe the tales of ghosts and gods and goblins which he says he has seen? It is full time that boy went to herding, said the headman, while Buldeo puffed and snorted at Mowgli's impertinence. The custom of most Indian villages is for a few boys to take the cattle and buffaloes out to graze in the early morning, and bring them back at night. The very cattle that would trample a white man to death allow themselves to be banged and bullied and shouted at by children that hardly come up to their noses. So long as the boys keep with the herds they are safe, for not even the tiger will charge a mob of cattle. But if they straggle to pick flowers or hunt lizards, they are sometimes carried off. Mowgli went through the village street in the dawn, sitting on the back of Rama, the great herd bull. The slaty blue buffaloes, with their long, backward sweeping horns and savage eyes, rose out their buyers, one by one, and followed him, and Mowgli made it very clear to the children with him that he was the master. He beat the buffaloes with a long, polished bamboo, and told Kamiah, one of the boys, to graze the cattle by themselves, while he went on with the buffaloes, and to be very careful not to stray away from the herd. An Indian grazing ground is all rocks and scrub and tussocks and little ravines, among which the herds scatter and disappear. The buffaloes generally keep to the pools and muddy places, where they lie wallowing or basking in the warm mud for hours. Mowgli drove them on to the edge of the plain where the Waingunga came out of the jungle, then he dropped from Rama's neck, trotted off to a bamboo clump, and found Gray Brother. "Ah," said Gray Brother, "I have waited here very many days. What is the meaning of this cattle herding work?" "It is an order," said Mowgli. "I am a village herd for a while." "What news of Shere Khan?" "He has come back to this country, and has waited here a long time for thee. Now he has gone off again, for the game is scarce. But he means to kill thee." "Very good," said Mowgli. "So long as he is away do thou or one of the 4 brothers sit on that rock, so that I can see thee as I come out of the village. When he comes back wait for me in the ravine by the dock tree in the center of the plain. We need not walk into Shere Khan's mouth." Then Mowgli picked out a shady place, and lay down and slept while the buffaloes grazed round him. Herding in India is one of the laziest things in the world. The cattle move and crunch, and lie down, and move on again, and they do not even low. They only grunt, and the buffaloes very seldom say anything, but get down into the muddy pools one after another, and work their way into the mud till only their noses and staring china-blue eyes show above the surface, and then they lie like logs. The sun makes the rocks dance in the heat, and the herd children hear one kite, never any more, whistling almost out of sight overhead, and they know that if they died, or a cow died, that kite would sweep down, and the next kite miles away would see him drop and follow, and the next, and almost before they were dead there would be a score of hungry kites come out of nowhere. Then they sleep and wake and sleep again, and weave little baskets of dried grass and put grasshoppers in them, or catch 2 praying mantises and make them fight, or string a necklace of red and black jungle nuts, or watch a lizard basking on a rock, or a snake hunting a frog near the wallows. Then they sing long, long songs with odd native quavers at the end of them, and the day seems longer than most people's whole lives, and perhaps they make a mud castle with mud figures of men and horses and buffaloes, and put reeds into the men's hands, and pretend that they are kings and the figures are their armies, or that they are gods to be worshipped. Then evening comes and the children call, and the buffaloes lumber up out of the sticky mud with noises like gunshots going off one after the other, and they all string across the gray plain back to the twinkling village lights. Day after day Mowgli would lead the buffaloes out to their wallows, and day after day he would see Gray Brothers back 1.5 miles away across the plain, so he knew that Shere Khan had not come back, and day after day he would lie on the grass listening to the noises round him, and dreaming of old days in the jungle. If Shere Khan had made a false step with his lame paw up in the jungles by the Waingunga, Mowgli would have heard him in those long, still mornings. At last a day came when he did not see Gray Brother at the signal place, and he laughed and headed the buffaloes for the ravine by the dhk tree, which was all covered with golden-red flowers. There sat Gray Brother, every bristle on his back lifted. "He has hidden for a month to throw thee off thy guard. He crossed the ranges last night with Tabaki, hot-foot on thy trail," said the wolf, panting. Mowgli frowned. "I am not afraid of Shere Khan, but Tabaki is very cunning." "Have no fear," said Gray Brother, licking his lips a little. "I met Tabaki in the dawn. Now he is telling all his wisdom to the kites, but he told me everything before I broke his back. Shere Khan's plan is to wait for thee at the village gate this evening for thee and for no one else. He is lying up now, in the big dry ravine of the Waingunga. Has he eaten today, or does he hunt empty?" said Mowgli, for the answer meant life and death to him. He killed at dawn a pig and he has drunk too. Remember, Shere Khan could never fast, even for the sake of revenge. Oh! Fool, fool! What a